Man, I was hoping no one would watch the SVS sub video. It got too many views. Now we have to do more subwoofer reviews. This is what happens.
Okay.
Audience lures you into believing this is the content they want to see, and then they'll no-show you on the next one. Happens every time. The more they ask for something, the worse the video is guaranteed to do. Mark my words. So don't fall for it, Robinson.
It's true. I think we might bring subwoofer reviews into the repertoire, if you will, but on a limited basis. Like I said in the SB17 review, it was very intriguing, the things that they were showing and saying at CEDIA, that I was just like, man, I'm going to break my rule because this looks too good to be true. So that's kind of what prompted me to do it. Otherwise, I don't think we would have done a subwoofer review.
I thought we would start off with some softball viewer questions.
Oh, okay.
But first, I have a quick update from SVS about the EQ update that some people asked about. Here's what my contact said, and this is a direct quote. For the EQ update, owners will be able to use the phone mic immediately or purchase the external mic for a nominal amount. We will notify all owners via email and SMS, I guess that's text, as soon as it's available, as well as post on our social feeds.
Okay.
Feel free to let us all know in the comments what you think about this new information.
Yeah, I was a little bummed that feature wasn't available. It was one of the reasons why earlier, just a minute ago, I said, it was so cool and too good that I wanted to play with it. And then
turns out it was too good.
For now, yeah, it turns out about a third of the reason why I wanted to play with it wasn't available. So, and they did a Yamaha. They pulled a Yamaha, they put a little asterisk, and then scroll down. It's like pending a firmware update. I'm like, damn it.
Yep, another brand, releasing something before the cake is fully baked.
Yeah, you got to stick the noodle in there and see if anything's sticking to it. It wasn't quite ready, but.
Well, before anyone starts accusing you of being a bootlicker, let's just get into those softball viewer questions I told you about at the beginning.
God.
Bo Rerun says, is this SVS Carl certified?
Yeah, I would say so. I tapped out in room, especially. I tapped out long before the subwoofer did. I did the open air sweeps in excess of 100. I think the loudest I got on those was like 105. And in open air, I even thought it was going to do structural damage, let alone I hit a 108, 110 dB peak at one point watching Fury in room. And that was scary. Not like, it was scary, cool, and awesome, but at the same time, so many things in this house kind of like shook. It almost, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but almost had like a sonic boom-like effect where there was just so much pressurization that occurred in an instant that you could feel the pulse kind of reverberate through the living room and into our open space and even kitchen. And that kind of, I don't know how I felt about that. Like one time, very cool. If that happened repeatedly, I don't know how the rest of our house would stand up.
Yeah, SVS, if you're watching and you're like, holy crap, he just compared our sub to a sonic boom. We got to use that. You better contact us first. Pro Dan Tech asks, do you get that 40 hertz notch with the Titans as well in your room?
You can. It really is more off to the left side. So knowing that when I share measurements of a loudspeaker, you're seeing the right speaker, which does not suffer as much, if at all, from the 40 hertz notch. It really is the left side of our room in the left front corner area of our room, to be more specific, which is why I also don't put subs over there. But yeah, even though the Titans have a bit of a boost in their bass, or can have a bit of a boost in their bass, depending on your placement, it's still not enough to sometimes always overcome that little bit of a dip that happens off to the left side of our room. And so the fact that I can then place a subwoofer, oddly enough, more towards the back left corner, which completely doesn't have that issue, The two just handshake like this in such a way that with the SB17, I was getting measured results and, in my opinion, sonic results that really started to rival the naked power, if you will, of the 800 signatures from Bowers and Wilkins, which was really something and not a statement that I make lightly. But nevertheless, in my experience and in this room, it was true.
Okay. Jose R. says, would you consider then a pair of Ultra Evolution bookshelves with the SVS SB17 a good enough or even a better buy than just the Titans by themselves?
I have run the bookshelf speakers with the SB17, and while that is a fantastic pairing, it is not the same. It is not the same. It can be done, it can sound exceptional, and the gains that you will have over not only a smaller budget and potentially a smaller visual kind of footprint and presence in your room with the bookshelves. There is something to be said when there's just that little bit more of a crossover handoff between the low, mid bass and upper bass and then the sub's capability. It can be done. I think it sounds great, and if you were to give me a week or two, I would totally get used to it. But we have the Nanos, going from the Nanos to the Titans, I still think the Titans are where it's at. Now, I will throw a monkey wrench in this, though. It's possible that now that the SB17 is in the corner behind my shoulder, it is possible that we may have been able to get away with the, what is it, the Ultra Evolution just Tower. I think it's just called the Tower. It's the one below the Titan. That may be Titan-esque with the sub, and so it would save you some money. It's still a Tower. But as good as the Nanos are with that sub, it's not quite the same.
We have a couple of questions about isolation feet.
Okay.
And how they improve or affect a sub's performance.
Mm-hmm.
Speed and Audio says, you mentioned sub isolation feet. Would adding these improve the sub's performance? I don't have any vibration issues unless I turn my system to very high levels, which I rarely do.
Mm-hmm.
And then Oz Kronos says, I've heard Hi-Fi Grandpa said that isolating a sub takes bass away. Was this your experience? Did you measure it with the feet in place? I have some rattling in my room and would love your input.
My open air and in-room measurements were all bone stock. I did not do any measurements, making any tweaks or adjustments to what you physically purchase or get from SVS out of the box. And I always try and do that because I want to be able to replicate the user experience. And not everyone's going to have isoacoustic feet or even SVS's aftermarket feet, let alone cheapy washing machine pucks. Have I noticed any type of isolation feet to take bass away? Not in my experience. Not in my experience. Do feet change the performance of the subwoofer? Also in my experience, no, they do not. I'm just one of those people, I guess. Maybe I'm weird, but I love isoacoustic feet. I really do. I think that's a fabulous product, but I like it for all of the things it does to save my floors, to cut down on reverberations and rattling in nearby furniture or other equipment. But I've never put the feet on any product. Sorry, isoacoustic. I've never put the feet on any product, run sweeps, and then taken them off and run sweeps and seen, maybe I have seen small differences, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say, while those differences maybe were measurable, I don't believe they were audible, or I didn't hear the before and after A/B results. And I have done this test with feet on one speaker and feet not on the exact same speaker, on the other side, and put them side by side and just A/B'd that way. They sound the same to me, but I still advocate for feet and isolation type things like that because it will and can make a difference. in the transference of energy, specifically vibrations, down into your floor and then up through adjacent household goods or products. It won't completely eliminate it either. Keep in mind, if you're really hammering the SB17, you can have all the isolation you want. If you have a cabinet nearby like we do, it's still going to pressurize the room enough to get those doors to move, and feet aren't really going to do anything. But if you're on wood floors, beam types, you don't have like a slab, but you have beam type construction. Pier and beam with subfloor and then wood floor over top of that, or even carpet. I would recommend spikes or some type of isolation. We're right on slab. So it's a little bit less of a thing for me, but I still put the isolation feet on because we have a polished concrete floor and I just don't want to mess it up.
Gamer Boots has a question about XLR ports on a subwoofer. Can someone explain why a subwoofer would have XLR ports? And then the second part of their question, what stereo amplifier or home theater receiver would use those natively and how would it be hooked up?
The reason you'll find XLR inputs along with RCA inputs on higher end subwoofers, which is not uncommon. JL had them. I think my RBH had them. I've seen them quite a bit. And the reason you'll see that is because while the vast majority of more consumer grade AVRs or preamps have RCA style, and that's usually what people are used to, there are a growing number of AVRs, processors, preamps that have XLR or balanced subwoofer outputs. And so you would take a balanced cable from the sub out of your preamp, processor, or AVR, if it has that, and you would go into the balanced input on the back of, say, the SVS SB17. And the reason that you would do that is balanced cables tend to be a little bit better and less noisy over longer runs, not to mention balanced connections kind of lock in place, which if you've got a subwoofer that's creating a lot of energy, potentially vibration, that may keep the cable from jarring loose and popping out. Is it something that you need though? No, you don't. Unless you know that you're running cable lengths, I don't know, maybe longer than 30 or 40 feet. Then I would probably advocate for balanced or maybe just go with the wireless solution. But that's why they would have it, is a little bit more for like the higher end market, when this is SVS's quote flagship subwoofer. And so they probably don't want to alienate the customer that maybe has something along the lines of, say, a Trinov or Marantz' highest end processor or AVR, which I believe, if memory serves, does have both unbalanced and balanced subwoofer outs.
Well, Proguerum and A Ridgeway are giving you some props for mentioning EDM and electronica music in your sub review.
Okay.
Proguerum says, good to hear you talk about a song like She Was by Seven Lions. Most audio people tend to dismiss songs like that as just noise made by young people that don't understand audio, even though most of the best sound designers are in those genres.
Oh, yeah.
A Ridgeway, shout out Seven Lions. EDM is the truest test of a sub's performance. Most reviewers don't bother, but let me tell you, listening to dubstep, house, or techno with a good sub will change your world.
Yeah, not wrong. For what it's worth, while we may not always point it out, I'm a huge electronica music fan. I mean, everything from Aphex Twin, Orbital, Fluke, Seven Lions, obviously, Moby's entire catalog, and I'm just rattling stuff off the top of my head, because it's my interests in that realm go pretty deep. The way I look at it anyway is sort of just the evolution of, I'm going to get so much hate for this, but I see a lot of that music as the evolution of orchestral works, because it's experimental. It can be very symphonic in its scale and grandeur and the story that it tells over several minutes. It's not all just repetitive notes. that people just jump up and down to flashy lights. Like there's a lot of complexity to a lot of electronica music, and it's one of the reasons why I really love it.
All right, well, the easy part's over. Time for some hard hitters.
Okay.
We've got some viewers who've been taking advice from forum bros.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Aaron Robbins says, I've been in a few audiophile groups, and I love how Aaron puts audiophile in quotes, and they all seem to think SVS isn't even a brand worth talking about. Thoughts?
Let me guess. Something like a Rel is more musical. Something like a JTR hits harder. Look, as with anything, variety is the spice of life. The problem, for whatever reason, with hi-fi and home theater is, while we accept that there are multiple brands, multiple different ways of doing things, it just seems like the second we grab onto a brand, all other brands immediately start to suck or do suck. And I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all. Can the SVS be boomy? Sure. But I without even hearing it, without even needing it in my presence, I know that I could take the most highest end, expensive, internet darling Rel you could give me. Hell, give me 4 of them. And I can promise you, I can make those just as boomy, one note, and not musical at all. And that's not me criticizing Rel. Not that all subwoofers sound the same, but if you don't take the time to dial things in and experiment and really spend time massaging bass notes, and so that they sit right not only in your room, but with the rest of your system, if you don't take the time to do that, I'm not surprised that people have had negative reactions to SVS, have had negative reactions to any number of brands. But I also think if people are being truly honest, there's probably a silent little majority of people that have followed forum bros, bought the thing that never sounds bloated or boomy or this or that, got it in their house, and they're like, it doesn't sound any different than my $400 subwoofer that I had before. I thought this was supposed to be musical and all of that. And it really, bass is a thing, man. It's a monster. And you have to learn how to tame it and live with it and kind of domesticate it. Because right off the rip, it's more often than not going to eat, if the subwoofer's built well, it's more often than not going to be boomy, or worse, you're not going to hear it. You're just going to keep cranking that thing up going, I thought everyone said that it does this. And it's about placement first. It really is. You dial in the SVS, it has the linearity and the output capability of some of the best subwoofers that I've encountered over 25 years of doing this. I know a lot of people criticize me that I'm not allowed to talk about subwoofers because you guys physically haven't seen subwoofers on this channel. But over the course of my 25-year AV journalist history, I have reviewed a lot of subwoofers. A lot. I continue to use subwoofers even if I don't bring you those videos. And I can tell you that the SVS has the capability to go toe-to-toe with anything I've heard so far, going back 25 years to today.
Well, I want to get to that more on that about placement, but we gotta help a few more people who've been in the forums.
Okay.
Brian Ruby.
Oh.
Says, I found the best placement of the subwoofer, and my family room is also the worst location for the look and function of the room.
Yeah.
Instead, I've opted for larger speakers capable of producing enough bass to my liking. Whenever I mention in forums I need or want a subwoofer, there is always a certain segment of audiophiles that go out of their way telling me the sound can never be good enough without a subwoofer. Are they speaking truth or not?
I will say this, and I said this in the review, and I meant every word of what I said. Now that I've had this experience, and now that the SB17 is dialed in, I don't want to remove it. I don't like how big it is. I don't like that it's there. We can see it. But I don't want to remove it because its presence does matter to me in my experience. Even at lower volumes, I can tell when it's on versus when it's off. Do you need that? No, of course not. Of course you don't. And depending on the style of music you may listen to, it may be less of a thing. You know, a subwoofer, needing one or not needing one. Knowing that I listen to a lot of EDM, I do like watching movies. A sub really isn't optional. Now, I would have said, having the experience that we've had for about a year now with the Titans, that, you know, they play low enough for me. And I know for KRISTI, you know, you're pretty happy with them by themselves. But integrating the SB17, I'm like, okay, we've kicked it up a notch. We've kicked it up a notch. Now, the Titans are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's just a really nice symbiotic relationship that, again, now that I've experienced it, I don't want to kind of go without it. But if a pair of larger, you know, full range towers works for you, then that's fine. Unless all of these people in forums are coming to your house and bringing with them the money needed to make your system to their liking, ignore them.
Well, then there's Ben. Ben says, question first, without DIRAC or bass management, where would you cross over your sub to get the best out of your Titans, mainly for 2-channel listening? Many, quote, here we go, audiophiles always in quote, have poo-pooed on subs for decades, and my argument is, without one, there's no way all frequencies can't be heard or felt unless you got a Wilson, Magico, etc. type money. By the way, lucky for you that your back wall is the best placement. I have a pair of SVS SB17s along my front wall, and getting the timing and phase on point, my fronts are ported, was the only thing I had to do some tinkering with. But
lucky.
Overall, you said it correctly. Having a premium sub makes everything sound better and run more efficiently.
As for the crossover point, thank you for your question. As for the crossover point, it varies based on the speaker and the room. Now, in our room, I can get the Titans to play into that about 25 hertz range. That's where the roll-off just really hits hard. So they're really stable, just a little bit past 30. So I always have a decision to make. Do I want to just kind of bring a sub in right there at the end of their limits, or do I want that overlap a little bit more? And I've always found that because of the little bit of 40 hertz dip off to the left side, overlap is the best way to go for me. And so I always bring the sub in beyond that 40 hertz region. So for me, my crossover point was somewhere between 50 and 60 hertz on our Titans, which, you know, may sound like overkill. And in a lot of ways, if I'm doing everything manually, I have to definitely feather, you know, the volume and play with the EQ so that I'm matching the SVS's kind of relative output, you know, more seamlessly. But if you're using room correction like Odyssey or especially DIRAC with bass control, where you can set the crossover points and the impulse response and phase and all of that individually more succinctly now, the integration is, it's so good. It's so good now.
S Palace, can you please explain why you went with a sealed sub versus a ported one? Maybe you can clarify the difference between them for newer folks to this subwoofer world.
Yeah, I hope I do a good job on this one. I will probably get it wrong because subwoofer folk are passionate. Sealed is there's no port on like a loudspeaker, you know, the opening that lets air kind of come out, whether that's in the front or the back of a loudspeaker. The same thing can exist on a subwoofer. Sealed means it doesn't have one of those. Ported means it does. And it can either be a big circle, multiple circles, a slot, like the Clips uses a slot port. In my experience, porting a ported subwoofer can create a greater sense of extension or low note presence. It can also help to better energize a room, maybe a little bit more efficiently or with less power. Noting that the subwoofer's amp is always, more often than not, is always internal, but it is maybe a way to eke out more output but using a smaller internal amplifier, whereas ported subs or non-ported subs or sealed subwoofers have a reputation, if you listen to Forum Bros, as maybe being faster or more musical. I don't know if I subscribe to the faster, more musical, more detailed versus, boom. I don't know if I subscribe to that. Again, it's all about placement and setup and how you set the settings. Because I've heard amazing ported subwoofers that are fast as shit and super musical. I've also heard tubby, sloppy messes too, and vice versa. So for me personally, I don't put a lot of emphasis on the ported versus sealed issue.
David Teeth wanted to know why SVS didn't go with an 18-inch design rather than the 17. So I reached out to SVS, and here's what they said. Our design team has always pushed the envelope of driver size. Larger drivers move more air and generate deeper, low-frequency extension, but can also be more prone to flexing and distortion if not designed properly. Our previous flagship was 16 inches, and with the advancements across the entire system, 17 inches was the natural next step. We certainly won't point fingers at subwoofers that are 18 inches or larger, but we designed the 17 Ultra R Evolution series to be among the lowest distortion subwoofers ever designed for the consumer market at any size, with enough output to satisfy even the most demanding bass enthusiasts. Our philosophy is always to deliver astonishing low-frequency extension that can be played as loud as a user wants, but never at the expense of transient response, precision, and musicality. We found 17 inches was the perfect sweet spot with this amplifier, voice coil, and motor design to achieve the best all-around performance. Oh, yeah, I know. That was a long one.
Yeah. I mean, look, everything that person said is true and accurate. Yes, larger drivers can do bigger things, different things. But I feel like subwoofers are kind of like digital cameras in a lot of ways. Same thing with certain amplifiers, where like we're in an arms race where it just has to be bigger because more is more, bigger is better. And everything comes down to use case. Like we bring up the Rail T0. The Rail T0 is not going to upset the SB17. But if I was in a small space, studio, apartment, bedroom, office, desktop system, T0 is probably the better sub, and I don't think anyone would walk away from a T0 going like, oh, it's good. It's just, it's not good for a space like this. But a T0 doesn't need an 18-inch woofer, and I don't think anyone would say that it does. So to me, it's just one of those things where I kind of feel like when you reach a certain point of performance, either a certain dollar figure, a certain type of performance, everyone always, the whataboutism always is about, well, why didn't you, or what about an 18? What about and then the second they make an 18, well, why didn't you do a 22? Why didn't you do a 24? Why didn't you do two 18s? And it's like, it's never going to stop. What?
Oh, poor David T. I did not read their question out loud to you, so you might have been a little harsh in the response, but
I
just David, just know Andrew's not talking, just to
No,
you.
I'm speaking to the class.
Yeah,
I'm speaking to the class. There are no bad or wrong questions. Please believe that. And please don't take what I just said as directed at you, David. You are somehow wrong for holding these beliefs. I think your question asking this question, I think your question is among one of the best. And it's likely one that people are afraid to ask because it's so easy for forum bros, fanboys, and all of that to just leap onto you like fresh meat and go, you don't know anything about anything. And then they'll immediately spit out like a dozen examples of bigger, better, badder, whatever subwoofers. When in reality, you're just trying to understand, like, what do you need versus what's available on the market.
So on the next couple of questions, I don't know if we're really going to have time for you to get into this.
Okay.
But let's try.
Okay.
Nestor says, "Hi. How to know?" Genuine question. The topic is how to test for your room acoustics, strengths, and weaknesses. They timestamped a particular area in the SB17 review where you address that. Jamie, maybe Jamie or Jaime, amazing review. Sorry for the dumb question. What are the things to look for when looking for a perfect location for a subwoofer? Is it supposed to sound boomy, tight, etc.? Is the subwoofer supposed to blend in with the mids or highs, or is the subwoofer supposed to outpower everything? Okay. Am I supposed to feel the low rumble or just hear it?
Okay. As for what to look for, are you supposed to hear it or are you supposed to feel it? This is going to be a subjective call. I think it's possible to feel and hear it while having tight, musical, responsive bass. Now, some people, and I've been in these theaters, I've been in these situations, they prefer the feeling a little bit more than necessarily the accuracy.
They even buy butt kickers.
Yeah, they prefer that feeling more than the accuracy, and to them, they'll pump the bass up a little bit. Understand, it is possible. It is possible that when you do this, you will sometimes, or all the time, muddy the low, mid-range, and even the mid-range, and that could hurt intelligibility. So there are going to be trade-offs. Now, there's no denying that if you can feel the punch of bass, you feel the rumble, the pressurization in the room, there's no denying that that has a visceral impact in your viewing experience, and as a result, you may be willing to forego a little bit of mid-range clarity. But what's great about a subwoofer of, say, the SB17's caliber or JL Audio's caliber and a number of other subwoofers is that you can have your cake and eat it too. You can feel it, hear it, and not sacrifice intelligibility upstream, so long as you set it up correctly and you know what you're doing. To the first person's comment about how do you identify
your room's acoustic strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah. How much time do you have?
This could be a good video idea.
It may be. Look, the easiest way to do it is, do you want to know your room strengths and weaknesses at and around your listening position, or do you want to know where they are so that you have future flexibility on placement? Those are two different things. If you want to learn where your strengths and your weaknesses are around your listening position, place your loudspeakers where you really want to place them. You set them there. Now put a microphone, UMic 1, which we use here, and Room EQ Wizard, and run sweeps through your system and just take a literal snapshot of your speaker's performance at your listening position. You're going to get a very squiggly line. So long as the bulk of that line is kind of within plus or minus 3 dB of the volume you put through your system, that's a pretty linear response. That's a pretty neutral response. Your room isn't having an effect on what you're hearing per se. I mean, a little bit here and there, but nothing crazy. But if you ever notice in some areas, like it jumps, like it's plus 6 dB over, say, you ran a sweep at 75 dB, and here at this frequency, it's like got a 6 dB spike or greater, or worse, it has a 6 dB or greater dip. Now you know, okay, holy crap, where these speakers are positioned, I got a problem. I got a problem, and that's the room. That's the room. Because while there are designed dips in a loudspeaker's response, either to accentuate some brilliance or some treble, or some mid-range presence and some bass presence, no one's building into their speaker a 12 dB dip at any one frequency. No one's doing that. Contrary to what forums may tell you, no one's doing that. So if you see that kind of thing, that's when you know, at least where you sit, you have a room issue. So then you have two options. You can grab that speaker and within reason, move it an inch or two to the right, move it an inch or two forward, take the measurement again. Sometimes that's enough. And if you're fortunate and it is enough, you're golden. But sometimes that's not enough. Like for example, I would say a 6 to maybe even 10 square foot area of the front left corner of our room, doesn't matter what you put there, that 40 hertz dip just exists, given the relationship our sofa is to that area of the room. So I have to overcome it. I have to deal with it. Or I have to, at a minimum, know it's there so that when I am describing the performance of anything to you, I'm taking that into account. So that's kind of how you do it. Now, if you want to know like, oh, let's find multiple areas of problems in our room, well, you can walk around your room with a microphone in hand and just a constant kind of series of sweeps and look at your laptop or whatever, and you'll just see you'll see the frequency go up and down and all around and all of that. And when you see everything take a dive, don't put anything there, yourself or a speaker. You know what I mean? And if you see it go up, you can still put something there, but know that maybe EQ-wise or tone control-wise, you're going to have to crank that mother so that it comes way down. And these are just, again, how much time do you have? How much do you want to get into the weeds? As for where to place a subwoofer, we've made 2 videos on this topic now, so we're just going to link those down below. There's a really easy way, and then there's the more advanced way. I would recommend starting with the easy way, and we can get you up and running with good subwoofer placement without any extra tools, any extra microphones or measurement software. We can get you up and running in 20 minutes.
Well, speaking of placement and the video you recommended, we linked to about the crawl method. C Booty has a question. I have a general subwoofer question I've never seen answered. If the subwoofer is positioned at a further or closer distance to the listener than the main speakers, doesn't this introduce a timing mismatch in the bass frequencies? Basically, out of laziness to do the subwoofer crawl and not wanting to run a long cable, I personally just position my single subwoofer, which is only used in a 2-channel setup, in the same plane between my main speakers.
Okay.
I realize this isn't ideal for best bass response.
I found, believe it or not, I found what I think to be the easiest way to explain it on Arundel's website. And I will link to that page, or I'll have KRISTI link to that page below, because they do a really good job in showing you how to fix time alignment between subs and speakers at different distances in relation to your seated position, that it's easier for you to go read that than it is for me to try and paraphrase it. So I'll link to that below, and it should help you.
I almost said Lewis Shatting. I think it's Lewis Hatting.
Okay.
That's awesome. Anyway, I'm 5. Hi, Andrew. Does the one sub work its magic? I recently read a book where the author is of the opinion that a single sub, especially with acoustic music, is detrimental to the music. His opinion is that if you do not have stereo subs, meaning I'm assuming that means two subs, you are wasting your time. What is your feeling in this regard?
I mean, look, the reason you would want multiple subwoofers is to spread the most even bass across the widest area. That's it. That's it. You're not necessarily, I mean, if you set everything up correctly and you're spreading bass over the most even area, adding a second subwoofer doesn't mean you get double the bass. You really only get about 3 dB more bass by having a second sub. in which case then you just change the volume so that they're actually the same. It's just about spreading the bass frequencies out over the widest area. And if you have a large room or deep seating, multiple rows of seating, stadium seating, then multiple subs make sense. But in our room, where I'm only interested in spreading bass evenly across this sofa, which is about a 9-foot linear span, a sub in that back left corner creates even bass from this armrest to the other armrest. It just does. So I don't technically need another subwoofer. I don't. Now, I know some of you are going to be like, oh, but you said in your Sonos review not 3-4 weeks ago that you preferred the second sub. Yeah, sure did. Sure did. Because on a small sub, using 6 or 8 inch drivers, I don't remember what sub 4 uses off the top of my head, but on a small sub like that, because I get that little boost in bass, that 3 dB of bass, it means they don't have to run as hard to give me a bigger presentation. And when basically the cost of ownership of adding that second sub for me is not too cost prohibitive, yeah, and the sub is small, it's easy to place, it's wireless, yeah, I'm always going to advocate for that. Because if we have guests over, my brothers come over or something, and someone wants to sit in one of, like the green chair over there, there's a greater possibility they're going to have the same bass experience that I'm having on the sofa with 2 subs. But when it's just KRISTI and I, the SB17, where it's located in our room, which you can see over my shoulder, 100% is enough.
Well, speaking of Sonos,
Okay.
we have a couple of questions, and
All right.
because there are no dumb questions.
There are none.
Official Ray Gonzalez
Okay.
and Green Awan,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully I got that right, probably didn't, want to know about how the Sonos sub compares. Official Ray says, as far as smaller subs are concerned, does the Sonos sub compare to how does the Sonos sub compare to the SVS Micro? And then Green says, I'd be interested in where you would put the Sonos subs in comparison with the SB17. Are they even worth to mention at this level?
Look, I watched Fury using the Sonos system. Fury is a great bass test. I watched Fury, the tank battle at the tree line, through the Sonos system with the Sonos Sub4 just kind of off to the left side of our sofa, which is on the left wall, nearing the back. And I had the right wireless sub actually kind of a little bit behind and to the right of our sofa in open space. Watching that scene in Fury at sustained volumes of 80-ish, 80, 85 dB, which would allow for peaks to go into that low 90s area, I had a very tactile feel. I definitely had punch and I had impact, but I did not have the pressurization of our space. So what that means is when Brad Pitt yells into his radio fire and Shia LaBeouf says on one, and you see the round kind of go back and then push forward and you see it fire out of the tank. With the Sonos, you get all of the low boom, and all that punch, right? But what you do not get is in the film, granted it's probably put in CG, when the round leaves the cannon of Fury, there is a wave, a rippling of air. That rippling of air has a feeling associated with it, has a little bit of a sound associated with it. The Sonos does not replicate that. The SVS does. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference. Now, is it enough where, okay, you can have the entire Sonos system with 2 subs for just under $3,000 all in? Is it worth it just for that to then build an entire system around something like an SVS, that is not up for me to decide for you. I will also say that you're not going to play into the upper 90s and even 100 dB range in those low frequencies using the Sonos subs without starting to hear distortion, breakup, and stuff like that. Not to say that they can't do it. They're just not going to do it as cleanly as the SB17. And you're definitely not in subsonic territory. You're just not.
Okay. Well, Mark Waite has a question, a similar question, but this time it's about the Sony SW5 subwoofer. How would you compare this sub, the SB17, with the Sony SW5 sub paired with the quad? Mark goes on to clarify his comment to another viewer and says, my more precise question would be, would the $3,000 for the Sony Quad and SW5 be worth it over what it would cost for a fully kitted out SVS system? I am coming from nothing, just the sound of my Sony A80J 77-inch TV.
Okay. Look, if you're coming from TV speakers, I'm not going to mince words. The theater quad with an SW5 is going to blow your mind. It will. It's going to be a markedly different experience. And for you, you might spend the next 5 years of your life just still being amazed at what that is doing all on its own, especially if you're just coming from TV speakers and you're new. You're going to have a way easier time going that route than jumping from TV speakers to let's build a whole SVS home theater and all that entails. But understand, just like my Sonos remarks, the SW5 is not comparable here. And you shouldn't compare it because honestly, you can't use, there's no world or reality where you can use something like an SB17 with the Sony Theater Quad. And the same thing with Sonos. There's no world or realm, legally, if you will, that you can use something like this with something like that. In fact, I think the only sound bar that I'm aware of where you can mix and match would be the Sennheiser Ambio. You know, you could get an Ambio and then go get something like this and do it because it has subwoofer outs. But everything else is kind of, you're in that sound bar's ecosystem. Coming from TV speakers, though, man, I don't want to discourage you from doing anything that is of interest to you. Do your homework for sure. But I think you're going to be super happy and have an easier time, especially if it's your first go with something like a Theater Quad or a Sonos Ultimate whatever system, versus trying to now jump aboard a full home theater system at, trying to jump aboard the train while it's in motion.
I would agree. I mean, I think that there's, not just the speakers you have to consider, but you have to purchase an AVR, an AV receiver. You have to get your placement right, and then you'd have to get the placement right of your sub. And I just think that's a lot for someone that doesn't have any experience in this. Now, like Andrew says, you could learn how to do it. And actually, we have a video, an older video, something about how to set up a 5.1.
Yeah, we have a 5.1 and an Atmos system.
So you could start there and maybe watch those videos before you make a decision. Like, is this something you even want to attempt to get into?
Yeah.
But I agree. I think the Sony Quad and the SW5 would be a great experience. Just make sure you don't buy the quad without the sub, the SW5. You absolutely need both of those because they're sold separately.
Yeah, sadly enough. But yeah, you can't have one without the other.
And to wrap this Unplugged up, which is, oh, by the way, this is Unplugged 32.
Wow.
Can you believe it? Time has no meaning.
Time has no meaning.
Add this to the things I never heard before your SVS review. People want to know about my opinion of the brown note. Boys are gross. You're gross. And this is a new one. Maybe it's kind of like all the drones people keep seeing in the sky lately. Paul Stearns wants to know if you have ever had the opportunity to listen or experience a distributed multi-sub system also known as a subwoofer swarm.
Yeah, I've heard a multi-subwoofer system. Hell, I've had one. The most subs that I have ever used in my own system is 3 for my own personal system. The most I've ever had is 3. But I believe my subwoofer record, not commercial cinema, but in a home, was 8.
8 subs?
8 subs.
I'm shaking my head, guys. Shaking my head at that.
It was very common for me to run into people and demo and have them put on demos for me that had 4 subs, but I think my record was 8. 8 is the most that I've seen in a consumer realm, and they were even dealing with subs in, in a raised or an elevated state, which I know is very in vogue right now. There's a ton of people saying, oh, now that you have subs in all 4 corners, you need subs in all 4 corners of your ceiling too. Which there's reasons for that. I'm not saying that those people are completely full of shit. There's reasons for it. But yeah, I think I don't know if I would call it a subwoofer swarm, but I've been in a room with 8 subs, and admittedly, I don't believe all 8 were set up correctly. It was a little bit boomy for me when it should have been just this beautiful, even swath of bass, but that's just the way that person chose to tune it.
So the brown note?
Oh, brown note. I think Mythbusters did an episode on this to show that it's maybe not possible of hitting. It's more of a joke. It might exist. It's a frequency that is so low that you don't hear it, but it stimulates one's rectum and can cause them to...
You just said rectum.
It can cause...
Why didn't you just say bowels?
It can cause some people to soil themselves.
Oh, God.
At least that's the myth, or that's the thing. I don't know if it's ever been actually done.
I'm sorry. I don't want anything to make me...
Poop?
Have a shat-valanche.
Shat-valanche.
Okay? No, I don't need that.
Yeah.
If you want to know my thoughts about the SVS SB17...
Yeah.
My only complaint is I wish it was smaller. It is exceptional. There is a noticeable difference having it in the system versus not. I really think if you're building a home theater, this is oh, that's Katie. She's like, you've been doing this too long. I really think if you're building a home theater, the SB17 is something I would definitely look at. I think it would probably provide some pretty good, it would be a good ROI.
Yeah.
For your system.
Yeah.
Music wise, I think you really have to be like just so into bass.
Mm-hmm.
Does it offer some improvements? Sure, it does. Yeah. But I do think you could probably get by with something a little less.
Sure.
But again, it's going to come down to a personal preference. But I did like this particular sub in our system. Mm-hmm. But again, it's just too, it's a little too big.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Thankfully, it fits or works. Sorry, it works well in one of our back corners. Had it needed to be placed in the middle of the room,
yeah, like off to the side on the wall there,
which we've had to do before with other subwoofers or other systems, or if it had to be put in the front, I just don't want to look at anything that big.
Yeah.
Especially if you also have to, your speakers have to go there as well. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff that ends up taking over your space.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my little mini
review.
Mini review, I guess.
I love it. Well, any other questions?
No, we're done.
We're done.
We ended on the brown note.
That's where most things would end. If one were to experience it, that would be the end of your day. So hit the showers. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching episode 32 of Unplugged. Stay tuned. Sunday, brand new video. Could be interesting. I got Katie here floating all around my face now. Anyway, thanks for watching so
It'll
much.
be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
No, it's going to be
Don't
interesting.
short sell it.
I think a lot of debate is going to come out of Sunday's video, and not debate like, oh, I'm trying to be, controversial again. I just think that we've reached a point in our media consumption where there are strengths and weaknesses to which direction should we go? Physical, streaming, something in the middle. So we're going to have that discussion on Sunday. Until
and then next week is the holidays.
Yeah.
Christmas and
Yeah.
Hanukkah and all the other, like, whatever it is you celebrate.
Yeah.
Is happening. Not quite sure what we're gonna do. Like, if we're gonna
Yeah, I don't know.
do an unplugged that week, or
We might take it off and just hit you with the final Sunday of the year. So there may only be 2 videos left in 2024.
Let us know what you think.
What do you guys think?
You guys gonna be around on Friday the 27th?
Yeah, we'll see.
Anyway,
we haven't decided.
if you're even still watching.
Yeah, exactly.
If you just bailed.
Well, they bailed at Brown Note because it hit them. It hit them. They're already in the showers.
If you bailed early, your opinion doesn't factor into this decision, does it?
Anyway, we're rambling now, so we got to get out of here. So
Merry
thank you.
Christmas and stuff. Happy holidays. Enjoy the rest of your year if we don't see you.
If we don't see you between now and the end of the year, have a good one. But yeah, thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.